Hello, everyone. My name is Brian Mollenkoff, and I'm excited to welcome you to this session of our CMMC Better Together webinar series, Shared Responsibility for Sustainable Compliance. At this time, I would like to introduce the two subject matter experts in the industry for this session. These experts are here for your benefit and to help make sure that your agencies are continuously compliant, so please feel free to engage with questions in the Q&A pod. Please help me welcome Dale Hoke, Chief Information Security Officer of RegScale, and Jennifer Galvin, Senior Solutions Engineer at Wiz. Dale, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Brian. I appreciate the introduction. As Brian said, my name's Dale Hoke. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer here at RegScale. My background, I hail from the Navy, 28 years, retired in 2000. I did various stints in the DoD with compliance and in R&D. Moved on to security operations, where I wrapped that up at LIPD Security Operations Center as the SOC manager. I joined RegScale in 2022 and haven't looked back as we work hard on solving the compliance and particularly automating the compliance problem. Jennifer?
Thanks so much. My name is Jennifer Galvin. I spent over 2 decades working on federal and civilian projects that are at an enterprise and scale, helping to streamline signing up for healthcare, registration of your drones, some of the other commercial services that you might experience as well. So thank you.
Excellent. Now, with that, we can get things kicked off. So I have a few questions for you guys. Starting off, many organizations view CMMC as a compliance exercise rather than a security transformation. What are the biggest challenges you see organizations facing as they try to operationalize CMMC requirements?
I'll take that one first, and then Jen, I'll kick it over to you. Honestly, I think the biggest challenge is culture. I see organizations that treat compliance as an annual event instead of something that is ongoing and operational. Um, Documentation gaps, lack of evidence traceability, fragmented tool sets create audit fatigue, and it just makes it really hard on folks to accomplish the goal. Right, operationalizing CMMC really requires embedding controls into daily workflows, automating the evidence lifecycle. And I think what we need to remember is the goal is cyber resilience, right? And compliance should be an outcome of good security operations, which equal cyber resilience. And that's really your return on investment on the CMMC side. I put time in, I build out automations, I deploy Wiz and RegScale and working together, right? And both the CI/CD pipelines of security operations and compliance gathering, everything works together to maintain a higher level of cyber resilience. So I see it more as a cultural change rather than a process change. Jen?
I would agree with all of that. The spirit of the CMC and the raising of the bar of compliance is to ensure that those who are delivering services meet these strict security requirements and keep data safe. And so, it's not just check boxes, as Tadale says. It's not just getting a check box and checking all those boxes. It's really about doing the right things and defending against the threat landscape.
Excellent. My next question for you guys is CMMC emphasizes ongoing validation, not one-time certification. Why do you think traditional manual compliance programs struggle to keep up with that expectation?
Jen, you can take this one first.
Yes. So as the threat landscape changes, I think remember the spirit is to keep you safe. So the threat landscape is changing on many different attack surfaces and it's constantly expanding. So it's challenging because if you have an expanding landscape where you have to look at so many different things, you have to solve that problem with either more tools or more people, or you would need to invest in a platform that is growing and expanding and automating all of those people, process, and frameworks. So if you have continual automation and continual coverage, then the problem is achievable. So, and that's really why we're here today.
And I agree with that, Jen. And just to add to that, right? All of these manual programs depend on spreadsheets and human updates, right? Everybody going in and knowing where the stuff is at, knowing how to update it, and understanding the process. And that process simply can't scale with today's hybrid cloud environments. Every configuration change, every user access modification, every patch event can shift your compliance posture. And you need to have a continuous visibility on the state of your controls, right? Dynamic operational control assurance, right? Without the automation and the automatic dashboarding and the automatic event management, you cannot maintain the validation, and it becomes an impossible task between assessments, right? So you can't do it annually. The goalpost is always moving, right? And there's just no way to keep up with it without having a manual process that keeps an eye on all of your events 24/7, 365.
Awesome. And with that, I will jump over to Jen's part of the presentation. Jen, floor is yours.
So I'd like to level set about why we're all here. It's wonderful that we're raising the bar on the quality of services offered. And what we need to understand is that we don't want to view this compliance as a barrier, but we want to view it as a competitive weapon for those who are selling in the defense industrial space. It is an opportunity to not only increase your security and the quality of service you offer, but also as a differentiator to set you apart as you bid on new business. So when we look at the challenge, this is addressing, cloud is a unique technology that is allowing organizations to build and scale rapidly and deliver cutting edge services. But attackers are increasingly looking at different ways of getting into your application. They don't really care about, where it, only looking at certain parts of it. So they simply look for the easiest way in. And so as over time, as we look at adopting some of these cloud, technologies, next slide, we're actually tasked with paying attention to more and more of the attack surface, deploying tools and people to look at different areas of that attack surface. And so we look at the different tools as your organization grows and grows up to address the needs that you're offering your customers, you're adding different tools for those different pieces. And each one of those tools is tasking the people in your organization with looking at different things. And as you adopt different technologies to scale your business, you're also bringing in more people and more tools to manage that. And so what that's doing is it's just increasing the administration overhead. It's creating a lot of different things that people have to look at to assess what kinds of risk exists and what kinds of threats are being targeted, and also increases to Dale's point, increases the administration overhead of you taking that information and proving that you have met the compliance standard that you are tasked to meet. So if we could go to the next slide, this is resulting in overhead for all of your teams and resulting in siloing of those teams to manage that workload. And if we go to the next slide, our goal would be to both automate and reduce the overhead on those teams. So what makes the combination of Wiz and RegScale different is Wiz usually comes in, we accelerate CMMC level certification by coming in and very easily connecting to your cloud environments and creating a defined lineage of where these vulnerabilities are. And we're also able to enrich the graph and provide deep context and deep correlation to all of those different detections that you see there that were represented by balls. So if you think about all the different risks and risk types of detections around secrets and identity and vulnerabilities and end of life and operating system, we're bringing it all together into a graph, providing deep enrichment, validated attack paths, and true zeroing in on what the root cause is. And this is reducing the administration overhead of the team, also allowing them to collaborate and to fix these problems faster. And it allows you to scale with the problem. So we're able to expand that platform to look at all those different attack surfaces, but still provide that deep context over time. So we're able to trace the lineage of these problems from code to cloud to runtime. And if you go to the next slide, we do that by enriching this graph and providing deep validated attack paths. So if we look at how this works, we have all these different alerting in all of these different dimensions that you might be experiencing now with your point tools, and that might be difficult to bring together into one source of truth. So what Wiz is doing is Wiz is bringing that together automatically For example, linking a CVE that you might find in a running system all the way back to its true lineage. So if we go to the next slide, we're going to go ahead and identify those CVEs automatically using our superior technology approach. Next slide. And we are going to correlate them to all of the running infrastructure. Next slide. And then trace it back all the way to its lineage. So if you guys are developing code, you're going to be able to actually see all the way back down to the repository, to the user, and to where it originated from. And this can reduce repeats in the environment. And that's how we're also bringing down that time. Next slide. This allows us to actually give the right information in the right context to the right people. And you'll notice about over 50% of the users of the Wiz platform as you deploy it they vary in job function. They're not just security or compliance people. They are developers, they are app team people. There are other types of people who use this information to get information about their vulnerability and risk position earlier in the process so that they can address and actually fix the problem. Most of the fixers of these problems that we identify in your CMMC assessment are things that these teams would fix, but they were unaware of because the goal of becoming aware of them is actually the security team. So if you go to the next slide, that allows us to democratize security and allows us to actually do make those inroads, those rapid inroads towards fixing the environment and getting it aligned with, so that it can be really addressed by the next part, which is the compliance and the proof. So if we go to the next slide, we address this in that allows us to do it end to end across the entire pipeline. So if you think about, a complete platform that would provide these functionality, we would have to do that across the secure cloud development, across the cloud operationally, and then of course we would be able to further respond rapidly to threats across that entire environment. And this would be across all of the risk. And this allows you to bring down the people and time that you use to improve your security program, and that really readies your business to address those security threats and provides that operational readiness for the next step, which is passing your compliance. So if you go to the next step, next slide. When we look at a typical CMMC timeline for a customer, we're talking about 9 to 12 months. And that's where, really it becomes challenging for the business to meet that compliance burden. So they have to prepare for their assessment, and that can take time. And they have to look at the gap assessment between their security teams, the health of their security team, their systems, and whether or not they meet the stringent requirements of that compliance. And then they have to perform the work of remediation and hardening. And then they have to produce all of this documentation and evidence. And then they have to continue to do that over time. And that continued production of the documentation and evidence, to Dale's point, that takes people and process if you're not able to automate it. And so that's where you see the comparison of Wiz and RegScale really bring this down. If you look at these typical timeframes and then we apply the platform and the automation, next slide, please. We're able to bring that down to somewhere around from 9 months anywhere to like 3 months. And we have these results with our customers. And the combination allows us to continually apply this automation over time, further reducing the need for people to continue to update these spreadsheets and comply with the federal process. And the federal process is not going to change anytime soon. They're going to produce a federal process that is accessible to everybody. And so they'll have those requirements as the lowest common denominator. And so you're going to need tools like the combination of Wiz and RegScale to actually continue to innovate in your business and to secure and to do the best things for your security program, but simultaneously also produce the evidence over time that is in the lowest common denominator format.
Jen, and before you move on, if I could inject a comment here,
Absolutely.
This is the first wave, right? This is the initial package. When you start talking about CMMC 2.0, when you get into second and thirds, right, the timeline is even shorter because you apply continuous monitoring over time with Wiz and RegScale keeping tabs on all of the work you've already done. That renewal and that revalidation becomes significantly shorter. So the 3 months is the initial package, but you could get any of the renewals and the self-assessments done in a fraction of that time based off of the work that you've already done. So not only is it all the value that Wiz and RegScale together into the initial CMMC phases 1 through 5, it's all the validation work for reassessment that there's a lot of value there as well. I'm talking, you're talking weeks, because you're moving from a point in time assessment to continuously being ready for audit.
Precisely. And that's where your ROI just simply grows. Next slide. And when you look at how your company, your organization has grown up, many of them grow up in different ways. And so as you look at how your security program has progressed, it's possible for you to have slowly acquired a number of point tools to do these particular functions that are all included in the Wiz platform. And that's what makes Wiz so compelling. We very often come in and we are adding capability in the security arena that you didn't have. You didn't have visibility into entitlements or sensitive data before. You're getting that automatically simply by deploying Wiz, and we're able to do those deployments in like half an hour, right? That's, within 24 hours, you would have these results. Other organizations were able to consolidate and remove a number of point tools, and that also provides ROI and allows us to get greater savings over time, and allows us to marry with this deep correlation. We're able to bring that data in for the security practitioners, but then there's an advantage there. RegScale can just take that data right from Wiz, which is one of the most authoritative and comprehensive sources that RegScale could connect to. So if we go to the next slide, we're getting all this functionality. And when you look at, just doing it singularly, if we were to do this with one product alone, there would be some implementation time, I think, for some of the typical customers that don't use Wiz with RegScale. They have to connect to all these different sources, and that takes some time. When we think about the combination of Wiz and RegScale, we're talking about it seems ambitious, but we're talking about continuous monitoring in a day, right? We're talking about connecting to your cloud environments in one day, within 24 hours, having information for all teams to use. And within 30 minutes of that, connecting RegScale and having RegScale produce all of the assets for your continuous monitoring. So we're talking about days at this point, which is ambitious, but true.
Well, Jen, if I could add something here as well. So there's kind of two use cases that Jen has kind of spelled out in the slides that I kind of want to bring apart. So first is in your DevSecOps pipeline, right? If you're developing work in your application and you're using Wiz, Wiz is doing your container scans. They're helping with your dash scans. They're capturing a lot of code problems, configuration issues, and they're registering those or reporting them to RegScale. And I know because I do this now currently in my own environment. So that value prop where Wiz is telling me where the problems are for developers, then I can go through and make sure that the developers, one, know about it, two, understand how to fix the problem, because the recommendations come into RegScale. So you're breaking down silos, right? With the team being immediately notified of everything that's going on right now. The second use case is everybody's got problems with shadow IT. Everybody's got problems with stuff popping up, particularly in a cloud environment. An asset spins up and spins down before you even really know what to do with it, right? So with the combination of Wiz and RegScale, Wiz catches the asset, writes it to RegScale. If it's a new asset, we'll help you baseline it with STIGs or CIS benchmarking, capture that data. If there's any issue on that Wiz scan, it will register the issue, get it to a workflow manager, and get it completed. So the two processes that I just kind of described briefly, because I don't want to interrupt Jen too much, but those two processes are 7 different people, right? Now you have 2 platforms replacing 7 different people and getting work faster to the people who need to fix it, and automating the low-hanging fruit and making a standard business practice, right? So your procedures, right, are now standard and enforced as a standard across the multiple platforms. They become a very powerful tool that go from fixing an issue in a matter in 2 or 3 or 4 days, depending on whatever SLA is, to fixing it in near real time, getting it to a control owner's hands, having them fix it, and then reporting it all the way back. So I wanted to take that opportunity to. Jen did a good job of kind of talking about the different aspects of talking to RegScale. But when you start talking about the use cases of RegScale for compliance scans, vulnerabilities, or I'm sorry, of Wiz Reg scan vulnerability scans, and taking all of that snapshot in time data and making it continuous, it becomes very compelling.
Yeah. And that's really why we're talking about the combination. And it just I think we have one more slide and we can just bring it up. But basically, like Wiz has already had a lot of success on the front end, really, when we're looking at organizations that are looking at that daunting CMMC level 2 certification, and they're just wondering, what it really, what do I really have to fix or entail or look at in my organization? Wiz is able to really give them that transparency, give them that roadmap for actually cleaning up the risk and the threats in their environment. And then we have a very simple integration that would allow them to continue the process moving forward in perpetuity in automating some of the compliance assets and the continuous monitoring that they are on the hook now for doing um, once they have reached their compliance. And we're able to accelerate that time so that they can go ahead and bring in new business, sell their services to new areas of the government and in the defense industrial space. They can do it faster, they can do it more confidently, and they can do it with the same amount of people. They don't have to bring on too many resources or other processes. There's not a huge burden to do that moving forward. And so that's really why this is so compelling. You can do it very easily, very fast, and have assurance that you will succeed here. And
Excellent.
I think that would conclude those slides. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, in that case, we can jump back over here. While you guys are talking about the Wiz and RegScale for CMMC 2.0, I had a few more questions for you. CMMC assessments are heavily evidence-based. Dale, this one's for you. How does RegScale automate evidence collection and reporting across multiple systems and frameworks?
So first, when you start talking about I think the goal for everybody who does security is how can I take one piece of evidence and use it to show compliance in multiple places. So with RegScale, we cross map the controls, right? And then we have inside our evidence module, our evidence locker is what we call it. You can save that one piece of a control and then cross map it to multiple compliance frameworks. And when you're talking about having multiple requirements, some businesses have you have SOC, and then you have a DoD ATO, and then you have a FedRAMP ATO, and you have ISO 27001, and you have to do DORA compliance and GDPR, right? So you want to take that one piece of evidence, capture it, and then map it across multiple frameworks at every chance that you can. And that's one thing that's a big piece that RegScale brings to the table. There was a second part of that question, Brian. Would you mind repeating it?
Uh, yes, it's the automate evidence collection and reporting across multiple systems and
Got
frameworks.
it. So it starts with the evidence. Then you need to maintain constant visibility, right? So the things you need to look for: control drift, configuration changes, things like that. So, and I talked about it briefly during Jen's slides, where um, when you start talking about evidence gathering, you got to show proof of configuration management, right? RegScale houses it. Wiz detects any of the changes, reports the changes, and then if anything's out of scope or out of compliance, reports those changes as well, and that's automatically captured, right? So the idea is talking to a scanner, right? Getting the issues into a single pane of glass to where you can dynamically do multiple things, right? Whether it's compliance as code out of the pipeline, whether it's a Wiz security operations scan, get it into the issues manager of RegScale and then move it through your workflow manager, say ServiceNow or Jira, right? So they can action it and then coming back. So, and we talk about POAMs, but I mean, really, POAMs are the things that you can't fix. So, Wiz identifying them early and as they are happening, and then near real time reporting them to RegScale, and RegScale talking to workflow managers allows you to reduce the actual amount of things that you're carrying on your POAM as issues, and helps you to automate all that evidence into a single place to where now you are managing it and you are near audit ready. So, it moves you from a point in time to near real time audit readiness all the time, which just makes resiliency a big deal.
Excellent. Now, one of the things you both have been touching on a little bit is CMMC is ultimately about reducing risk, not just checking boxes. So, how does the Wiz RegScale partnership help organizations focus on the controls that matter most to their assessors?
And I'll take this first because I feel like a lot of times when you think about the most appropriate time to implement Wiz for this, it's very early in the process. We Most companies run up against some challenges because most security tools are designed for security people, and that's not really scalable or helping to prepare the organization for the audit because most of the people who would fix the problems are operational people or developers. So we have this disconnect between like the tools that are looking for risk and then the actual people who would improve the processes so that they can pass their audit, right? So what Wiz does is number one, Wiz is a security tool that is designed for everybody. It has a level of accessibility by creating those correlations and bringing down the explanations into like very easy to understand sentences and very easy to understand correlations and connections, right? I think that's really important, and it gets the information to the right people immediately. So this is a tool that you have an organization that's like running up against different groups that have to do new processes and new things to satisfy. That's a lot of friction, right? With Wiz, it's really not going to be very new. It's going to give them that organic way, very easy to understand way of, understanding where the risk is in their domain and their discipline for the projects that they're working on right away, information that they would not receive in a very timely or easy to understand manner with other tools, right? So I think that's just number one. And number two is just the superiority of our approach. We end up finding more with the way that our platform can actually detect these things. We find out more things that would be hidden from you with other tools, and so that now gives you that level of transparency that you didn't have before. So that actually does, really help actually solve the security problem and makes it accessible to those who are going to correct those processes and actually improve the security posture of the platforms that they're offering. And so that really guarantees two things. It really helps guarantee a shorter time frame with less friction, and then also completely eliminates the risk that you might enter like a remediation period after the audit because you have actually cleaned up your problems at the beginning. Does that make sense?
I think it makes perfect sense. And adding to that, I feel that what Jen really kind of described, right, is the functionality of Wiz on the early side, right? So they're catching the things, right? Now, what are you going to do with the things, and what do we need to do with the things? So whether it's a misconfiguration, whether it's vulnerability, all of those things, right? So compliance used to be a checkbox, right? It used to be a stick by which we beat security analysts to do things and system administrators to do things. The cloud has changed all that because they could spin things up and take them offline before a checkbox. You can even look at the checkbox. So the idea is, what does good operational security look like? So Wiz is doing it spins up, it's checking its configuration, it's checking does it have a vulnerability, what is going on, it's maintaining constant vigilance on all of those assets, containers, and everything that is in your enterprise environment, and it's doing it at the most granular level to the biggest level, right? And it's maintaining all of that in a place that you can find it. Now, with the operational piece carrying on, right? When we start talking about compliance as code, when we start talking about cyber resilience, when we start talking about the outputs of what good security should look like, you have a great scanner that's doing a lot of great work. Then you have a great tool in RegScale that is taking all of your compliance requirements to cloud and put it in a single pane of glass. It is allowing you to maintain evidence in a central repository, continuously updating the evidence that's provided to it all of the time, and then automating the workflow manager while keeping an eye on your security baselines and your control drift. So the goal is no longer just to be compliant, right? The goal is no longer to check the box and get your certification so that your business can operate in the DoD. The DoD has moved the goalpost and they have made the CMMC process more stringent for good reason. We're seeing security professionals, up their standards, right? So as everybody kind of moves towards a risk-based uh, management process, right? That it's really important that us as industry provide the guidelines by what good risk management looks like, and risk needs to be in near real time, all the time, and you have to have your tools. And really, when I start talking about culture change, you have to you have to change the way you think about it. You can't just check the block anymore, right? You've got to have a well thought out baseline of infrastructure that includes security operations, your CI/CD pipelines, your GRC, your regulation management, your risk management pieces, all housed in a place where it's knocking down silos and people can talk actively about things right now. Because the bad guys, they're staying vigilant, right? They're on top and looking for holes. And if you don't have all of this wrapped up, then you're missing the point. So we got to move into good risk management. We got to do it 24/7, 365.
And then I just add one more thing. So we think about the power of like how software and technology has changed over time. The big change culturally, I think, has been like continuous iteration. Like, not, we want to break up our teams to continuously iterate to get better and better and better over time. That philosophy has been adopted by development most of all and operations second, right? Maybe possibly security last. And that's really what, when you think about what Wiz brings to the table, our platform is really transforming the security side into one of like continuous iteration because we're able to deliver that information to everybody who needs it so that they can fix their problems. And I would think that the real innovation here and the combination of Wiz and RegScale is that RegScale is also bringing that continuous iteration of compliance, right? I mean, the big risk to the business you know, uh, is the time it takes to achieve this certification, and the time is directly correlated to whether or not you can pass or fail the audit. And so by automating the process of producing the documentation, you're now adding the ability to continuously iterate until you are able to assert that you meet that standard, right? Which is impossible to do without automation. I mean, can you imagine trying to continuously iterate when you have to put people in front of a spreadsheet and other tools to produce your assets for the audit, right? I mean, it's just not possible. So we're really adding that continuous iteration into the security and now the compliance space as well, and that's going to align all of those organizations to the actual true goal of your business, which I think is really powerful.
And it was never designed. The current process, manual spreadsheets and the evidence collection, it was never designed for the cloud, right? The cloud is moving faster than people can even think about registering what's going on. You're not doing the continuous controls monitoring with tools, particularly tools such that are as powerful as Wiz, right? And you're not using the automations and the continuous monitoring that RegScale brings. You're behind the power curve, and it really, when you start talking about CMMC, continuous ATO and the DoD and things of that nature, the game is changing, and unless you change with it, you're going to be left behind at the business level.
Excellent. Well, while we have a couple minutes left, I wanted to quickly talk about the future perspective of things. So, as cybersecurity frameworks evolve with DORA, Executive Order 14028, and AI on the governance on the horizon, how does the continuous compliance approach help organizations stay ahead?
Let me start with that one, Jen, and then you can plug in. So, when you start when you start looking down the road, right, you're going to have different AI. You're going to have, I mean, compliance and particularly regulatory compliance is going to be a continuous moving goalpost. Once you gather it, right, then you automate it, then you have a place to start, right? So, I look at this as the baseline, and then with Wiz and RegScale maintaining that baseline, it makes achieving any compliance easier because now you have your process, you have everything that's talking and working together. Now you just have to add it, right? So it gives you the ability to scale out and up very easily, and it gives you the ability to cross map very easily because both Wiz and RegScale do it. They cross map. The Wiz does a compliance scan, right? It cross maps them all across multiple frameworks. So, we both actually have the new frameworks in really short periods of time. So a lot of time tools take some time to update. We normally get our catalogs updated within 72 hours of a new release. Wiz is right there with us. So as you get more down into the future, it becomes easier as regulations change to map if you have a place to start, right? And when you start talking about everything's in a single pane of glass, everything is in one place, then you could cross map across your existing tools, where before a long time ago you couldn't do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think ditto. Like, I think if the last organization to align with the speed of the business, I think is like it's like security and compliance. And so I think what we want to do is realign them to continuous compliance because the continuous is iterative. And so now you've actually made that transformation. Now you have a complete iterative. The entire part of the organization is working completely iteratively towards your goal.
Excellent. And I guess with our last few minutes, do you guys have any closing thoughts, any highlights that you want to make sure our audience leaves with from today?
Jen, please go first.
Yeah, I mean, I do submit, like we help so many organizations. Most of them are starting their journey. They're already in the beginning of their assessments and they're already beginning to deploy Wiz. I think um I don't know, it's the bar, if you think about what you need to know as you start the journey, like the timeline you have, how much time are you going to give yourself to really get that single pane of glass and that single baseline to figure out where you are and where you need to go for compliance? Are you going to give yourself a week, a month? Think about that timeline. And think about the opportunity to to really shorten that timeline to at least get that single pane of glass and that first baseline of like, or where do we stand? How are we going to do? Right. And I think that's why we're doing this webinar, is to really give you guys a path forward to say like, oh, within as little as a week or a couple weeks, 2 weeks, you could actually have that perspective and start to begin to formulate your plan. I think that's really compelling. And that's why I see so many people like right at that beginning, they're coming directly to Wiz. I think that's really where they start.
To kind of wrap up my thoughts on this is, and I talk a lot about um, the impact that CMMC and various regulatory compliance requirements have on people. But at the end of the day, CMMC isn't just about passing an audit. It's about earning and maintaining the trust of our nation's ecosystem. What Wiz and RegScale are proving right together is that compliance doesn't have to be painful, it doesn't have to be reactive, and it doesn't have to be slow. By combining our real-time cloud visibility with continuous compliance automation, our organizations can move from static checklists to living, breathing security that just do nothing but improve your cyber resilience at the end. Continuous compliance isn't a buzzword anymore. It's not something that's coming in the future. The companies that start automating today will not only meet their CMMC 2.0 requirements, they'll be ready for what comes next, whether it's DORA, any changes in the AI governance, or another executive order that nobody sees coming, right? Our mission is really simple. Together, we're here to help organizations reach a point where security and compliance operate in sync continuously, confidently, and at mission speed, right? Compliance shouldn't be a blocker to innovation. Compliance should not be a blocker to business, right? If you plan it and you deploy the right, if you deploy the right thought processes and you change the way you're thinking about it now, it becomes a business amplifier, not just a cost center.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Dale and Jennifer, for joining us this afternoon. I also want to thank all of our participants and attendees who have joined us. We hope this webinar has been helpful for both you and your organization. There's still so many more great sessions to attend, so feel free to visit the link on your screen to review the full agenda and sign up for any additional sessions that you are interested in. If you have any further questions or would like to request more information, please feel free to contact us via the information on this slide. Thank you again to everyone and hope you all have a great day.